in what we're talking about today, learning and listening and really leaning in for the purpose of understanding, it is so foreign to our culture, to our relationships. Usually we're listening to get what we want. I want to understand you so that I can get what I want and I can offer this perspective. But to really I want to know you. I want to understand you. I want to enter into your story. I want to have a better sense of the whys in your life. Hello, everyone, and welcome to 3 Words, a bite-sized podcast about the simple and strategic choices that you can make, that I can make, that we all can make in order to become the very best versions of ourselves. My name is Dr. Michael Brown. I am the host of 3 Words, and I'm here today with my very good friend, Daniel Costello, and we're going to be talking about these 3 words.
Listen to understand.
Wow. Listen to understand. I don't know about you, Dan, but I find listening to be one of the most challenging, difficult tasks of my life. I'm a life coach. That's what I do, is listen to people. And yet it is so challenging. I think we see this at a micro level in our relationships. I think we see this at a macro level across culture. Listening is hard. My guess is you would agree.
Yeah, I think listening is hard when you say you're a life coach because you have so many things to say. And I struggle with listening. So I was afraid to talk about this topic because it's like, man, there's so many people in my life that are probably going to watch this. They're going to be like, yeah, Dan's not that great of a listener. And so I think it's good to talk about this for myself because I need to learn how to listen. And I think the biggest thing for people like yourself and like me is we are always thinking about the next thing that we want to say while we're listening to someone else. And so throughout this podcast, I'm going to have to really, pay attention to what you're saying to me so that I can answer with a logical response and not just be pushing my agenda on you or on whoever's listening. You know what I mean?
Well, and it's interesting, even that we're doing this podcast. Podcast is about speaking.
Right.
And podcast is about offering content and offering ideas. But even one of my producers recently said, Michael, I want you to spend more time really listening to the guest and drawing out stories and seeking to understand their perspective and then let that drive the conversation. So it's been really actually fun to think about it that way, that a podcast, even for me, is not as much about having great things to say, but listening so carefully to what the guest has to say that we might actually take a completely different direction that is most inspiring and most encouraging and most relevant to the listener. So I just want to listen very carefully to you today because, like you, I struggle with listening. But let's even try to practice that as we're spending time together today. So all that to say, what are your thoughts, Dan, when you think about this notion of listening to understand?
Yeah, I think, let me paint a picture maybe quickly as an experience in my life that I've seen about someone who is a good listener, my wife. So right now, because of the pandemic, we stay at home. I'm at home working from home, and she's at home with the kids. And it's just been kind of interesting to see how she has developed this passion to ask about my job every day. And if you're married or if you have someone at the end of your day asking you about your job, especially if you're a man, you're probably not excited to talk about how your job went today, especially if it was a hard day. And also, there's a thing about sharing your experience about your job to your spouse and for them to know all the technical aspects of your job and then explain it to them and then watch their face glaze over while you're talking to them. And you're like, okay, you're not really paying attention anymore. You're just asking me because you feel obligated to say, how was your day,
Tell
honey?
me about your day.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
So, but my wife is learning, she's listening to understand. So she asks me how my day is. But the key thing that I want to paint here is that she does it consistently. And so because she does it consistently, every day she's learning more about what I do for a living. So now I feel more comfortable to share the specific things that are going on in my day. And I'm using buzzwords, from my technical job that she actually understands. She knows the people that I work with. She knows the projects that I'm on. And I guess, some principles that I've pulled from that is that she's listening to understand. So she's consistent, and it's not just a one-time thing. It's genuine. It's not like obligatory where she just has to ask me because I'm her husband. It's intentional, is a key thing. So it's not just a distracted one time, let me ask you how you're doing, and I'm going to glaze over once you give me an answer. So I really feel that my wife encompasses this within our relationship, and it makes me feel valued and loved. Like she actually cares about my job. It's not just, we're married, so how's your day? Oh, well, the kids are crazy right now, so can you take care of it while I'm in the middle of explaining how my day was?
Yeah.
That just makes people frustrated,
Well, at the root of this, it seems like Laura loves you. She cares about you.
For sure.
And so the most caring thing, and I want to say it this way, that the most amazing gift that you can ever give another human being is to listen to them, to be fully present with them and really listen. And not just listen just enough. And I'm sure you've been here. I know I have been here. Listening just enough to then know how I'm going to respond because I got some things to say.
For sure.
Or listen just enough to build an argument.
Yeah.
So that I can poke holes in what you're having to say. And now we're talking from a cultural perspective, because obviously that's what we're finding ourselves in today is everyone's trying to poke holes in everyone's arguments and no one's really listening to one another. But even in relationships, particularly during conflict, we're listening just enough to respond. We're listening just enough to build our case. Yeah. We're not really being present. But Laura loves you and you feel loved.
Yeah.
When someone sits with you and really listens.
Yeah.
Not just to build a case or to do the obligatory, okay, I'll pay attention.
Yeah.
It's the end of every day, but actually to understand. So it's an extra layer of really intentional work to understand you.
Yeah. And the thing that I love about it is, and I know we're talking about my wife here, but she leaves her agenda at the door in search for a deeper relationship. And I think that's so important when I think about listening, and I think about even the coworkers that I have at work. I find that the most significant times or moments that I have with individuals on a one-on-one basis is when I'm completely focused in on what they're saying or what they're bringing to the table, or they have a problem that they're bringing to me, and I'm listening to them, and I'm undistracted, full disclosure, or fully focused on that individual and what they have to bring to the table. Our relationship now is built a connection that wasn't there before, as opposed to, what are you saying? Oh yeah, whatever. You're on your computer. Someone comes to your desk and you're kind of distracted and not listening to them. It's just so important that's the way we build relationships.
Yeah, for sure. And listening is hard, and it requires a certain set of tools and ability. And I think the biggest tool would be the commitment to asking fantastic questions. So if I'm asking questions, and I've said this before, but if I walk into each situation more interested in people than being interesting to people, it's a game changer. And so I think in many ways, to be able to be more interested in people, and to be able to ask really, really, really good questions is just powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the problems that I think, though, that we run into even today, I like how you brought up the culture, like the macro, the cultural side of things, and then the micro, which is the personal. I think we want to make everything macro in the world that we live in today. I mean, just even if we think about social media, based on what you view, social media is going to show you more of what you view. So based on your opinions and the things that you like and the people that you like, or the things that you like, what people, or the things that they say, you like those things, all those things are coming back into your social media feed and just continuing to fuel this opinion that you have about life, about politics, about religion, I know we're talking about weird, or not weird, but hard stuff. But we want to make everything macro. We want to make everything them versus us. And it's interesting to think about, what if we made it more of a micro conversation? What if do you even know anybody that has a different opinion than you?
Wow.
And
have they sat at your table?
That's right.
Have they been in your home?
That's right.
Have we sat face to face?
Have you had a human connection with that person, sat across a table, looked at them and actually listened to understand, not listened so that you can build your case against them, but listen to understand why they think the way that they think. And I know that's a really hard thing. I struggle with that because I feel opinions about people and I see what people post and I'm like, I don't really appreciate what that person has to say and I don't care. But that person has a story and that person has a reason that they came to that conclusion. Why did they come to that conclusion?
That person has a story. And I think in many ways, that's the foundation of everything we're talking about today, Dan, is this notion that behind every face is a story. Behind every post is a narrative and a reality that maybe we're not connected to. And our natural reaction to difference is to avoid it or to attack it.
Right.
And what we're talking about today, learning and listening and really leaning in for the purpose of understanding, it is so foreign to our culture, to our relationships. Usually we're listening to get what we want. I want to understand you so that I can get what I want and I can offer this perspective. But to really I want to know you. I want to understand you. I want to enter into your story. I want to have a better sense of the whys in your life. I know for me, even when I get stuck in a conversation and I want to really continue to go deeper, here's a little trick that I use is if I don't even know what question to ask, I'll just simply say, that is so interesting. Tell me more. And what I find is that human beings love to be listened to, right? You described it even when you come home from work. I mean, I do as well. It's particularly as a life coach where I spend a lot of time listening when someone actually asks me a really good question, which is rare, and says, tell me how you're doing or help me understand this in your life or how this has been a struggle. It almost catches me off guard and it's like, wow, this is cool.
Yeah.
Because it is the greatest expression of love for someone to really be present with you, to really listen, and for me to be known. And that's really the root of it is relationships are built on being known and being understood. And so listening is very much a part of that.
Yeah. And I even remember there was a time where you and I think we were at Bar Louie and we were having some boneless wings like we always like to have.
Now, Bar Louie is not a sponsor of today's podcast, but they're welcome to be if they. We were having our boneless wings at Bar Louie.
That's right, and I just remember there was I challenged you on some things, and we had a really deep conversation, and I asked you some hard questions.
Oh, that's right.
And you were like caught off guard at first because you're like, wait a minute, I'm typically the guy that asks all the hard questions, and I'm the guy that's supposed to be listening to how your life is going, And I just remember that moment. We became deeper. We became bros in that moment. And I loved that because it felt like you trusted me just as much as I had trusted you. So it's about trust too. It's not just about, build or just listening just so that you understand them, but you want to trust the people that you know and the people that you don't know sometimes.
And in this day and age, we need to be listening more. In this day and age, we need to prioritize understanding above all else. So even as we wrap up this podcast, I want to say to our viewers today, I want to say to those who are listening in on your podcast platform to this 3 words podcast on listening to understand. Here's my challenge to you, not just for this week, but for today. Would you initiate a conversation with someone today with one intention? To understand them, to know them, not to make a point, not to build an argument, not to offer your opinion, but that you would simply initiate a conversation today where you would spend the bulk of that conversation just listening, being present, being right there, seeking to understand them, to know them. Listening is hard. It's hard for me. It's hard for Dan. It's hard for all of us. It's a really challenging task. But that's the purpose of this podcast, and that's the challenge for today, that we would commit together, not just in our relationships, but good Lord, as a country, as a culture, as a nation, to lean in, to pause, and to listen in order to understand. For life coaching, consulting services, or to hire a keynote speaker, please visit dmbcoaching.com.